Another common question is, how many Chinese characters do I need to know? This depends on how far you want to take your Chinese. There are perhaps more than 50,000 characters in existence, but the vast majority you'll never see. The written language has a very long history, and a lot of those characters are now only found in ancient texts that require special training even for Chinese native speakers to read. So let's not worry about those for now. A modern dictionary has around 20,000 characters instead of 50,000. Again, you still won't need to know what are those. Let's compare with English. The Oxford English Dictionary, which runs to 20 very large volumes, contains 171,476 words that are in current use, whereas a vocabulary of just 3,000 of these words provides coverage for around 95% of common texts in English language. That's around 1.75% of the total number of words currently in use, making up 95% of the usage. In the real world for Chinese, the best estimate is that you need somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 characters to be considered literate and to be able to read the basics of a newspaper without too much difficulty. An educated Chinese person will know somewhere around 6,000 to 8,000 characters, but again, the vast majority of these characters will be very rarely seen. The good news is that these 2,000 to 3,000 characters make up the vast majority of all the material you'll be reading in everyday life. According to research, the character frequency to recognize half of the characters in a newspaper article, you only need around 152 characters, not very many at all. This seems surprising, but think again about English. The huge majority of the content that we read is made up of words that are used again and again and again. These words like the, he, but, has. These are words that make up the vast majority of written material, and this is the same in English, Chinese, and all foreign languages. To get 75% comprehension, we require around 482 characters. 85% comprehension occurs at around 788 characters, and 95% comprehension is at around 1,566 characters. So even if you do know 2,000 to 3,000 Chinese characters, it's these same 1,500 that will be making up the vast majority of everything you read in Chinese. If you're interested in the research that makes up these frequency lists, then you can check the link in the description below. Also on Sensible Chinese you can find lists of the 1,500 most frequent characters, as well as other lists focusing on words. Otherwise, be happy in the knowledge that it's not actually necessary to learn tens of thousands of Chinese characters. Instead, by focusing on the most frequently used characters, we can vastly cut down our workload. Instead of learning rare characters that we won't ever use, we'll instead be concentrating on the most frequently and the most commonly used characters. This is equivalent to learning the English word for bus or car before we learn jet ski or zeppelin, or perhaps learning the word door before we learn portcullis. One important distinction before we move on. Asking how many characters we need to know is not actually the most important question. It's the question that's asked the most because most people are familiar with the concept of Chinese characters, but the most useful thing to know is how many words we would need to know. A word is different to a Chinese character, although sometimes words are one character long, so this distinction becomes very confusing. Words tend to be, on average, 2 characters. We'll be talking about this a lot more later though, and the good news is that learning words from characters you already know is a lot easier than learning the characters in the first place.